First of all, let me say a word about Carson-Newman. I've had the honor of growing up down the road in Knoxville, of being the mayor of Knoxville, and now being the governor of the state of Tennessee. And I have a huge appreciation for what Carson-Newman brings to our state. You have produced some of our very best teachers, wonderful nurses who have served, great military servants, business leaders. And beyond that, you've really been an institution that has stayed true to your mission when so many others have wandered. So let me thank those members of the board and the faculty and the administration, and most of all the students. You have lent a lot to Tennessee, and you've given new luster to our name by what you do here. Now, you might think, like, after an announcement like that, introduction, you kind of get used to that and all that. Well, it takes a little while to be used to all that. When I was first elected governor, I'd been in office about 2 weeks, and the general of our Tennessee National Guard had said, hey, I need you to come to this. We're having our Tennessee National Guard retreat this weekend, and I need you to come. And I kind of whined a little bit. My daughter was in college. She was bringing all of her college roommates to stay at the governor's residence. We were going to have a really cool weekend. And kind of whined because I was going to have to take a lot of my Saturday to go do that. Well, I get there, and they have me in a little holding room, and finally this sergeant comes and gets me, and he says, stand right here. And we walk through the door, and there's this huge room filled with all the men and women of the Tennessee National Guard. They're all in uniform. They're battle flags with all the different little strips showing the battles they've been in through history or flying there at the end of every row. And it is impressive. It's this huge room. And the minute I walk in, and the sergeant says, stand right here, and the band starts playing, and they start playing this incredible song, and everybody stands up, and the announcer comes over the loudspeaker and says, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Commander-in-Chief of the Tennessee National Guard. The band's playing, everybody stand up and saluting. I'm thinking, this is really cool. And this sergeant elbows me and goes, sir, I think that's you. So you get a little more used to it after time. I appreciate all of you who are waving your programs out here. Harry Brooks, who you know is a trustee here, but I know is the chairman of our House Education Committee and a wonderful servant of the state, said, you know what that means, don't you? And I said, no, what? And he goes, talk faster, talk faster. I also remember my very first graduation I spoke at as governor. And by the way, I think this will be the last one I will speak at as governor. I go out of office at the end of the year. And so I was thinking, driving up here, remembering the very first one I came to speak to. And I'd called the president the week before and said, what would you like me to talk about? And he said, well, tell me, Governor, what did the speaker talk about at your graduation? I said, I don't have a clue. And he said, they won't either. Just be really short. So I have gotten that lesson. But I do want to talk really quickly to the folks, those of you who are sitting on the field in front of me this morning. It is an incredible accomplishment. One of our main goals in Tennessee is to have more people do what you just did, to graduate, to get a certificate or degree, and then go on. I'm curious, if you're the very first person in your family to graduate from college, would you stand up? Thank you. Thank you to you and to the family who believed in you and to you who are changing the trajectory of the rest of your life. You know, I'm trying to do the math. 38, 39 years ago, I was sitting here, and like I said, I have no clue what the speaker talked about, so I won't talk long. But I do remember thinking, and when, like you all were, when Dr. O'Brien, or I think some of you were, when Dr. O'Brien was said, can you believe you made it, and how excited you are, I'm willing to bet that underneath that excitement, there's more than a few of you that have a little bit of a knot in your stomach. Maybe about, you know, for most of my life till this point, either somebody was planning it or there was a plan. My parents were taking care of me, or kindergarten, first grade, and kind of knew how that was going to work all along the way. And now for the first time ever, there's not really a plan. And maybe you have a job, you know what you're going to do, but even beyond that, you're not certain if that's what you really, really want to do. I graduated, and I was pretty certain I had a plan. I was going to work in business for a couple of years and then be a pastor, go to seminary and be a pastor. Worked in business for a couple of years and became convinced that I wasn't called to be a pastor, so I stayed a while longer, thinking, I wonder what I am supposed to do. And 22 or 3 years later of business and learning way more than I ever thought I would, I ended up running for mayor of Knoxville and loving it. ran again for re-election, and then in 2010 ran for governor, and it has been the biggest honor of my life to serve in this way. But I never, ever had a clue that I would do this when I was sitting there. And as a matter of fact, I remember thinking more like, how am I going to figure out what I'm going to do? What is the plan going to be for me? The truth is, even those of us with great plans don't know that that is how it's going to work out next. I by the way, am in your shoes. I'm getting ready to, like you, to be out of the current work that I'm in here at the end of the year. Like you, those of you who've been in housing here on campus, I not only lose my job, but I lose my housing at the same time. Unlike you, I also lose state troopers who can drive a little faster than the speed limit, getting me I-40 from Knoxville to here. But I do have that next thing of, well, what's next? You know, our tendency is to want to exactly know what the plan is, but if I could say one thing this morning, it's this. Don't focus so much on what you're going to do, but on how you're going to live. There was a time when the people of Israel had been taken captive. They were in Babylon, what we would call Iraq, and they were, like I said, they were basically in slavery. Jeremiah's back in Jerusalem, which has totally been leveled, okay? And Jeremiah writes him a letter. Now, if you all have taken captive somewhere, I'm going to write you a letter saying, keep your head down, stay out of trouble, we'll come get you as soon as we can. But that is not what Jeremiah wrote to these folks who are wondering, like, what should we do? Jeremiah wrote them this. It's in Jeremiah 29. He tells them, build houses and live in them. Plant gardens and eat their produce. Take wives and have sons and daughters. Take wives for your sons and give your daughters in marriage, that they may bear sons and daughters. Multiply there and do not decrease. But here's the line I want you to hear. But seek the welfare of the city where you have been called, and pray to the Lord on its behalf. For in its welfare you will find your welfare. And then he goes on to say in verse 11, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. Then you will call upon me and come and pray to me, and I will hear you. You will seek me and find me, and when you seek me with all your hearts, I will be found by you. So what have I learned in the 38 years since I sat facing the speaker that I can't remember who he was or what he said? I have learned that what God does is call us to a place and asks us to seek the welfare of that place. My sense is you all are going to be called a lot of different places all over the world. I think there's a lot of different countries. I think 32 countries represented here, right? I see some of you in military uniform. You could easily be sent anywhere in the world. Others of you might end up right here in Jefferson City. But wherever you're called, seek the welfare of that place. We are called here, no matter what the role is, to seek the welfare of the people around us. So that's my first piece of advice. My second piece of advice is this, and I thought about that when we were up in the Ken Sparks Athletic Complex. If Coach Sparks was here, he would say, hustle. I haven't found a substitute for working really hard, working really, really hard. And the people who I know who get the most joy out of life are people that hustle about what they've been called to do. So the first thing is to seek the welfare of the place that you're called, and the second is to hustle. And the third one is this. If you read through the Bible from the beginning to end, there are a lot of recurrent themes. But one of the most common recurring themes is that of humility. It says, more often than I can remember, for God is opposed to the proud, but gives grace to the humble. You all know those people who, when they, wherever they are, the old saying, they want to be the bride at every wedding and the corpse at every funeral. Don't be that person. Be the person that when you walk into a room, you don't say, here I am. You say, there you are. Be that person that seeks to understand that the story is not about you, but there's a bigger story going on that God has called you to be a part of. The psalm that was read, thank you very much, ends in what I would use as my final word to you. The first is seek the welfare of the place to which you're called. The second is hustle, and the third is to be humble. The final thing that I would add is this, the end of the scripture reading for today. For the Lord is good, His steadfast love endures forever, and his faithfulness to all generations. If you doubt that, turn around and look at the people sitting behind you, the generations that have come before you, that have cheered for you, encouraged you, occasionally admonished you, but most of all, been those generations that have been encouraging you toward faithfulness. And remember that the Lord is good and his faithfulness endures for all generations. Thank you for the honor of being here. Congratulations to the graduates. I look forward to seeing how what you do in the next step. And if I could add one small plug, I hope you stay and do it in Tennessee. Thanks so much.